Being it's 5:25, I'd like to call the annual budget meeting, the committee of the whole to order. Pledge has been taken. Roll call.
So noted.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Let's move on to the presentation of the debt service, the general fund budget, and the wheel tax fund. Oh, sorry about that. First of all, I'd like to approve looking for motion on the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Dorsey to approve the agenda. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Now, let's move on to the presentation of the debt services, the general fund budget, and the wheel tax fund. Trudy?
All right. The first presentation that I will be going through tonight is our debt service levy. And we are currently at, for 2025, I can go through each of these. We have our May 2026 GO debt. That debt actually paid for the garage and the river wall, if you remember those very large projects back in 2026. And the final payment on that will be 2035. We had another debt instrument in 2018, and the majority of that paid for the Division Street and the pool upgrade. And that final payment is in 2038. We had Warner Allen roof projects in the Newton Blackmore Trail, and that final payment will be in 2040. And then recently in 2023, we had our downtown and then the fire truck and the library donation, and that final payment will be in 2042. Also, there is a short-term note of $50,000 that would be taken out at the end of this year and paid back in 2025. This is part of the budget presentation. And as we go through, you as a committee can decide whether you would like to move forward with that short-term debt. And we can talk about that as we get through the next portion of during the general fund budget, and you'll see how that helps with some capital projects as we go through there. But these are total debt service of 2025 for $1,022,775. And just so you know where that kind of sits, our outstanding debt then for 2025 would be at $11,940,000. And if you take a look at our debt limit, which is 5% of our equalized value, that is at $26,444,200. So we're not even at 50% of our capacity, which means we're in really good shape going into next year, because early next year we'll be bonding for Oshkosh Street. So we'll be moving forward with that with Ellers, and then we'll be working with the bonding agency. So I feel like this budget puts us in a really good position to look very financially stable moving into 2023, so that we can get the best rates on that debt service as possible. We're hoping that we're looking at some things for that debt service, other things for that debt service, equipment and things of that nature. So we're hoping that we can set ourselves up for a great interest rate for that debt service in 2023. And then you can take a look at so if we do this $50,000 bonding this year, it drops down in 2026 and gives us some room for that debt service coming up and those payments to be made starting in 2026. And then when we have 27 and 28, you can see they're all quite flat there. And then what you anticipate over time is by 2029, we'd have assessed value, and that would absorb some of the impact going into those later years of the debt service. We do drop off quite dramatically coming up here. And I know seems like a long time, but time goes so fast. In 2036, you can see that the debt service starts to, actually there's almost a $400,000 decrease at that time. Also a time when a lot of our TID districts would be closing. The 20-year time would be up, and we could see some very large increases of assessed value coming out in 2036. I think it's more like 2038. So a lot of good things happening within our debt service. And again, we won't approve this debt service at this time. I'm gonna go through the general fund next, and then we'll talk about, a motion after. So I'm gonna do the debt service, I'm gonna do the general fund, and then I'm gonna do the wheel tax. And then John will call, a motion, or we'll have a lots of conversation about where the budget's gonna go and make those motions at the end. So that is the debt service, budget. Does anyone have any questions on any of that? All right, if there's no questions now, then we'll move on to the general fund budget.
Ready for me to take it from there?
Yep, and Chad's gonna give you an overview of, that budget to start.
All right, we're going to start off with a kind of a state of the city and 2025 budget message going into our general fund budget. So as we look ahead to 2025, the word that comes to mind is momentum. Over the last year, New London has experienced a transition the city hasn't seen for some time. There is excitement around the growth the city is seeing, and the momentum is building. Significant investments have been made in the downtown district with a 2-year revitalization project nearing completion, resulting in a complete transformation of North Water and parts of Pearl Street. This investment was made possible by a $2.9 million STP urban grant, which funded a majority of construction. During this project and listening to feedback from business owners and patrons, the city added a new expanded off-street parking lot in the heart of the downtown. Several open houses and public information meetings helped guided the design for the new downtown, and it was inspiring to see downtown property owners embrace the momentum by making facade improvements to their buildings, further building on the city's investment. SC Swiderski embarked on a significant multi-year project by starting construction on a new 98-unit community living complex along the Wolf River. This additional housing in the heart of the downtown will have a significant economic impact on the district. Excitement has continued with new proposals from other developers, including a multi-use commercial housing development and a new beer garden in the same area. Further evidence of growing momentum. Throughout 2024, the Library and Museum Board, the Library Fundraising Committee, and staff have worked tirelessly to design and raise funds for a new public library. In October, New London's momentum received a tremendous boost with the announcement of a $3.9 million State of Wisconsin Flexible Facilities Program grant, which helped the library achieve its fundraising goal. This grant will enable the creation of a state-of-the-art library, another anchor and destination for downtown New London. The downtown achievements were not created overnight, and much of this success can be attributed directly or indirectly to the creation of the downtown TID district. Without the cooperation of all taxing jurisdictions agreeing to defer increased tax income during the life of the TID, many of these improvements would likely not have been possible. Outside the downtown area, the city opened TID number 7 on the north side, building on the momentum generated by the new Aldi store. Creating this TID in 2024 will allow the city to capture the incremental tax revenue generated by the Aldi development and reinvest it in infrastructure for further growth. Several developers have expressed interest in this area, and we look forward to seeing what develops. Throughout the city, residential housing was added in 2024 with 8 building permits issued for new single-family and 2-family housing units. The Celestial Hills Apartments on Beckett Road also fully opened, allowing 48 new apartments in that development. We expect these numbers to increase as housing remains a critical need. Looking ahead to 2025, the New London's momentum is expected to continue. One of the most significant developments for this coming year is the completion of the 4-lane Highway 15 project. The improved driving conditions and the reduced commute times are anticipated to attract individuals and families relocating from the Fox Valley in search of more affordable housing and quality rural living. While the city has some capacity for additional housing units in several existing subdivisions, the potential for increased demand means it will need to prepare for new subdivisions and development opportunities. To encourage this growth, the city has initiated a process to rewrite its zoning code, aimed to reducing barriers and allow for more affordable housing developments. The goal is that these code improvements will unlock more cost-effective funding opportunities for developers, making new housing even more affordable. Improvements and investments in the community will continue with the New London Public Library reconstruction project, which is expected to be complete at the end of 2025. This relocation will provide the momentum for the New London Public Museum to implement its own plans and fundraising efforts to expand their services. Plans are also underway for park enhancements. Important partnerships with local service clubs continue, with plans to improve restroom facilities in Memorial Park and upgrade ball diamond conditions at Pfeiffer Park and Hatton Stadium. In 2025, the city will also need to update its 5-year comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, providing an opportunity for public input and direction for future park needs. Although the city has invested in park and public facilities, it remains focused on improving streets. Road improvements are still one of the city's highest priority, with over $8.5 million invested in road improvements over the last 8 years. I want to say that again, when people complain that we're not doing road improvements, $8.5 million invested in road improvements over the last 8 years. In 2025, the city will continue this focus with planned reconstruction of Oshkosh Street at an estimated cost of $4 million. The city is fortunate to have secured a $2 million LRIP grant and will utilize incremental funding for TID number 4, which will cover over half the project's cost, saving local taxpayers a significant amount. Looking forward to some highlights in the proposed 2025 budget include the city competitively bid the employee health insurance plan and secured a benefit package with increased options at no additional cost to premiums. However, the overall cost of health insurance for the city will increase due to more employees opting for the city's plan. The New London Chamber, New London School District, and the City of New London have discussed jointly funding a community grant letter, similar to WPACA's model. The proposed budget includes a $15,000 expenditure to cover 1/3 of the cost for a part-time community grant writer. Due to inflation and increased replaced values in building and vehicles, the city experienced a rise in property and vehicle insurance premiums. With the city's recent growth, we need to invest in zoning, planning, and building inspection department to ensure adequate response time and services for anticipated developments. The proposed budget includes funding for an additional full-time employee in the department, with plans to hire in the second half of 2025. Regarding revenue, the city expects an increase in shared revenue from the state, but a decrease in transportation fees. Thanks to the city's recent growth, an allowable levy increase will be $54,972, double the amount allowed in recent years. With the budget as proposed and preliminary assessment values reported from the state, residents at this point in time can expect a nearly flat municipal tax rate from 2024, with a modest increase of about $40 for a $200,000 assessment. This represents about a 1.9% increase in the city's tax rate, well below inflationary pressures we have all experienced over the past year. In conclusion, I want to acknowledge the hard work of our entire staff and leadership team in developing the 2025 budget. Despite constraints imposed by levy limits and inflation, they have continued to spend responsibly and maximize revenue opportunities. A special thanks goes to New London Finance Director Judy Radke for all her efforts in creating and managing the city's budget. Navigating assessed value, equalized value, mill rates, TIF regulations, bonding, and managing hundreds of accounts is no easy task, and Judy has done a tremendous job with having the taxpayers' best interest in mind. We all look forward to working with our team, the Common Council, and residents in the coming year as we continue to build on New London's momentum for future growth and success. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. All right, so does anyone have any questions, comments at this time? Otherwise, I will get into the meat and potatoes of our general fund budget. All right, so the first page here goes through in numbers a lot of what Chad talked about in the introduction. So Lisa put dollar and cents on many of the items that he was talking about. So expenditure decreases. As you can see, it's 1, and it was our senior center. That was just a budget change because when Ginger was going through her budget, she noticed that there was a number of hours that the senior center was being budgeted for was more than what actually that individual was working. So she reduced that dollar amount. Now our expenditure increases. Our insurance for both our fleet, which is our vehicles, and our buildings went up $11,300. We all know our personal insurance is going up, and we are not without those increases also as a city. Police wages went up $51,100. Police fringes, now keep in mind that they added 2 family health additions at $50,000, which is included in here. And then the other increase would be WRS contributions based on wages. Our general fund employees' wages are up $65,045. The retirement, $12,628. Here's the building inspector position. Please keep in mind, this is both wages and health insurance. So that dollar amount is $60,000. And the funding for this is for half a year at this time. The grant writer is in here for $15,000. That's a new position. And that's in conjunctions with the chamber and the school district. So the 3 units got together, and I think that if this ends up coming to fruition, is going to be a big help within our office to help us look for those grants that are available for us. The audit went up $5,000. Department of Public Works had a small increase for some small tools and maintenance of $12,350. Recreation and the Department of Public Works, the next 2 of $10,000. Those were just under budgeted. We had an employee who was a single and was a family health insurance plan actually back 1 year ago. And those were caught in the new budget cycle. So those each went up $10,000. The cable area went up $6,680. Just keep in mind that that expense also goes up on the revenue side. And I didn't talk about that in the inspector position. The inspector position also has the revenue side going up $60,000. So we have noticed since we've increased those permit fees that there was additional revenue coming in now for a couple of years. We didn't want to increase it until we actually saw some history within those accounts to be able to move those dollars up. But the inspector position would be fully funded through permit dollars. And then on the cable side, this would be increased dollars of franchise fees. And then there's just a miscellaneous adjustment of 16, so that total expenditures came out to the budget amount increase of $334. Any questions on any of those? I think I do need to mention that the wage increase is a 4% across the board. So there is no question about what is being move forward with this budget. There was some other changes within the police union contract, but you all read those and have the history on what that looks like.
Yep. And I'll just kind of reiterate on that. So when we started the budget, we did have staff and direct staff to start at 3%, but as Judy worked on putting the entire budget together and I did some research, what was going on across the state for budget increases for wages. I put on your desks, and I want to kind of point this out, a document from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. It talks about the Wisconsin Economic Forecast for August of 2024. I'm going to kind of read the last paragraph. Forecast expects Wisconsin nominal personal income to grow by 4.3% 2024-2025. This year's wages and salaries growth of 4.7, along with a 4.6 growth in supplements to wages and salaries, are driving much of the growth in total personal income. Growth in wages and salaries is forecast to slow down next year, but strong growth in proprietary income and property income will maintain a total personal income growth rate of 4.3% in 2025. So the state's forecasting that next year income tax or incomes are going to be around that 4%. That's, you know, one of the bases where we're proposing a 4% increase for tax or wages right now.
Are there any other questions on any of the expenditure increases within the budget?
Was the inspector position, is that the one that was going to assist Dave?
You are correct.
Okay.
And there's not a defined, you know, hierarchy kind of figured out yet. First of all, let's put the budget together, and that's going to allow me some time to research how other communities organize that. For the most part, I see most communities split zoning administration and planning to one person and then building inspection to another person. We gotta kind of figure that out yet. The first step is to budget for it. And then we'll be coming back to finance and personnel with a proposal how we want to set up that hierarchy and that organization of that department.
Thank you.
And I'll pick in for the grant writer as well, like Judy was talking about. A combined effort, we talked about this at economic development. The economic development committee did make a motion that they want to support continued efforts towards that. The grant writer position right now is a proposed part-time position, and it would become a chamber employee. So it would not be a city employee. The chamber would house that employee, the school district and the city would contribute towards that chamber employee housed at the chamber. But we would still have to come up with agreements with all three entities before we move forward to the next step. So the first step would just be budgeting. The second step would be coming forward with an agreement that all three entities would sign, moving forward with expectations. So you're gonna have another round of approvals for that process down the road.
And on the revenue side, just so you know, that one will be fully funded from economic development funds. It did come late in the budget process, but we did not want to not include it. So in order to do that, you will see 15,000 coming out in designated funds from economic development, from the economic development fund to pay for this, but it is not our anticipation to continue to do that. Going into 2026, we would just make this a regular operational grant writer moving forward and not take those dollars out of the designated funds. Any questions on any of the other ones,
And
John?
then, under the building inspector, portion of current inspector, that comes out of fees collected, correct, from
Correct.
building permits?
Yep. So the $60,000 was added. Also, you can see it right here. Building permit revenue. It's actually a little bit more than $60,000. So the dollars to be able to get that individual in here is all from building permit revenue, 64,900.
Thank you.
And like Chad said, that will be coming to finance and personnel. You know, you'll be able to approve what that position is going to look like, how it's going to function back there. So you'll see all that prior to the hiring of that individual.
Thank
you. Any other questions? All right, then revenue increases. We did have quite a few revenue increases within our budget. Like Chad had mentioned, the state shared revenue. This was nice to see. We had a lot of assessed value increase moving from 2023 to 2024. So that did see almost double that we've seen over the last 3 years in shared revenue. The personal property taxes. If you remember back, Adam came to one of our finance meetings and he talked about personal property. Our state now pays for personal property taxes. They are no longer on the tax roll. So they've shifted from the businesses to the state paying those dollars into the community. And that is the dollar amount for the city of New London. Now, just keep in mind that that dollar amount will not change. So sometimes, you know, we'll increase our tax rate over time for the city and those dollars amounts will go up. The state caps it at when they stopped, when we were not allowed to levy anymore. So, and the shift, so you're gonna see something weird this year too. You're gonna see the dollar amounts that go on the tax levy are less than previous years. And this is why, because those assessed values have been shifted off of our tax roll and there's less dollars being collected because the state is funding us on the other end. Okay. Room tax revenue. So this must be that we have more people sleeping their heads on the pillows, as they call it. So another 5,000 there. The sewer revenue was a 4% increase, and that's for all of the individuals in this office who work and put effort into the wastewater treatment plant. Building permit revenue is up 64.9. Court fees are up a small 6,600. our increase in income is 5,000. I would especially like to be bigger than that if interest rates stay the way they are, but we don't have, you know, we don't know what the future is gonna hold for us, so I kept it quite steady and quite conservative. I don't see any issues or concerns with the $5,000, and I would anticipate that actually would be higher. We increased the amount of TID dollars that are going into our general fund. We fully salary fund everybody in our office, so we don't run into problems in the future. But the TID dollars, we increased by $20,000 because I believe Robert in particular is gonna have half of his salary, just him alone, to the downtown project and be able to shift over to TID 5 this year. Library revenue went up $9,393. Cable franchise, this is for the payment on the expenditure side, another $7,169. And then we also had an increase in the front, the museum grant from the Friends. They had added an additional $5,000 on the expense side. So this is the revenue side to pay for it. And then our decrease in revenues. To collect, and we have for many years, $87,000 from our utility. And what that did is paid for our work when we collect utility bills. So starting January 1st, we will not be collecting utility bill payments in this office anymore. We've already started that communication to the taxpayers. And they have so many other options, online options, to be able to pay their tax bill. The utility figured it wasn't worth the money to have us collecting their tax bills. So they decided to utilize their other resources, and I don't blame them for this. I mean, a lot of people pay all their bills online. So they asked not to continue with that anymore. A part of that also was for use of our city attorney. And they said they normally, or more times than not, hire somebody out with the specialty of the utility. So I think like half of it was utility payments and half for our attorney. So those came off, something new for 2025. State highway aids went down by $55,000. If you take a look at how state highway aids are calculated, they're based on the last 6 years of how much the city spent, and it has to do with street construction. And that sometimes it's like, that doesn't make any sense to me because we've put so much money into street construction over the last 6 years. But in 2017, we were able to take out over $5 million bonding, and I talked about that earlier, because we closed one of our TID districts, and we were able to build that city garage without any additional dollars to the taxpayer, because all those that huge amount of assessed value on TID 2 came off the books. So at that time, and the city garage counts towards highway aids. So in 2017, we spent $5.8 million on highway aid related expenditures. And since then, we've been spending 3.8, 2.6, 2.5. 2022, we spent 4.4, 2023 was 3.7. So that's the amount of money we are putting into our streets. So eventually, just because this huge dollar amount came off this year, but eventually we're gonna see that start going up again. I would expect next year to be pretty steady, but then as we continue to work on our streets, we're gonna see that state highway aids start to increase too.
How does that work for the work that was done down here in the Fifth Ward? For the
Yep, that was
streets?
in 2023. So that was the $800 and some thousand that we put in back here. Yes. Yep, that's all in there. And we spent $3.7 million in 2023 on streets.
So one thing, I don't know if you were gonna look at it, but you told me that, with the downtown project, because of the grant, one of the negatives of the grant is the positive, we're not paying the grant, that's being help subsidize the project so the taxpayers aren't paying it directly. But unfortunately, we're not spending that money, so we can't use it towards our numbers. So our numbers for 2024 are gonna be looking low to bring down our average that we spent over the last how many years. So that's kind of a negative of the grant as well for our transportation aids in the future.
So unless we actually expend it out of our financials, we can't take it as an expenditure, and we didn't pay for it. So, it's the state dollars, and they have their own state, aids that they calculate, so they use it in their calculation. All right, so total revenue increase of $193,800. Which is actually up from previous years. All right, any questions on any of the revenues, either increases or decreases? And we're gonna move on to the general fund budget by category. And so the general government is up. So the general government is up 101,000, which is about 6.69%. Please keep in mind that that includes the new position, the half a position for the building inspection. So that's why and that's $60,000. So if you were to remove that, that percentage would be much less. Public safety, which includes our police department, our fire department, and our ambulance, is up 4.38%, 128,000. I'm gonna go through these in more detail as we get back a couple pages. So just so you can see at a larger view, and then we'll drill down on each of these areas. Public works is up about 3.1%, 36,800. Recreation culture, 72,806. And there's our health and community service down 5,200 at -2.2. Our equipment maintenance, we're leaving at 145,000, so that's the same. And then capital equipment and projects and road maintenance in this budget would stay at $500,000. So we would continue to fund that at the same level we've been funding it for a very long time. For a total general fund budget of $9,161,224, an increase of 3.79%, which I think is quite conservative when we know that inflation and cost of living and all those other things are hitting almost double digits. So I feel like it's a really good budget and not very large increase for all the other pressures that are going on within our community and our cost for things. So the overall increase would be 3.79%. And then on the revenue side, so we're at an increase of 334,000. Just for comparison, on the revenue side, we went up 193,000. So that's a big dollar amount from year to year when we're looking at our revenue side. But again, for the license and permits fees here, that's the pay for the $60,000 that we increased on the other side. So the shared revenue was up 52,000, tax equivalents up 78. Now this is where the money comes in for the personal property paid by the state. That's why that dollar amount looks so big. So instead of taxing for it, it comes in from the state, and then it comes in on the revenue side instead on the taxing side. There's state highway aids down 55,000, library aids up 93. Grants and donations up 70,000. Part of that was that museum grant. Interest revenue up 5,000. License and permits fees, that's the building inspection area, 72,000. Public charges for services, that was the court. And then here's no longer the intergovernmental revenue from the utility. So on that side, we're up 3.56%. We did a sewer transfer increase of 4%. And then the TID revenue, we increased by $20,000. Like I said, a lot of us spent a lot of time on the downtown project this year. So I would anticipate, I have $60,000 in there. I'm anticipating even more of our salaries going to that for the current year. I just haven't calculated it yet. That doesn't happen until February of next year. So, but I would anticipate that to be even higher than that. And we will drill down on the expenditures even farther. So I went over the one where I said the general government was up 6.69. So here's in smaller categories, how those increases play out. So for the mayor and council, we have a small change. And then administration, here again is the building inspection position, the health insurance increase for that position. Remember, that's $25,000. So what I did is I fully funded the health insurance for the year and then put the rest in the salary. So we can adjust that or whatever happens when that position gets hired. But going into 2026, I would anticipate an adjustment of where those dollars go. Not taking out of the health insurance side, but probably more adding to the wage side. And then the operation and maintenance on that administrative was the audit side. Insurance is up 11,000, again, our fleet insurance and our building insurance. And then on the community development side, it was the grant writer. And there's the increase of 101,000. Again, keeping in mind 60,000 of that is for the building inspection position. The police department is up, theirs is wages and then the addition of the family insurance, 4.57, $118,000. Fire department, 7,700, and most of theirs is wages. Ambulance is up a small amount. This was like phew for this year, because sometimes the ambulance can be a large chunk of our increase. I think one time it went up 25,000. So this was nice to see. And plus, I think Chad talked about it when he took a look at the contract, that there's going to be actually another ambulance. So that'll be a nice addition for the communities in that consortium. Public Works up 36,800. Again, that was that 10,000 in health insurance that got missed from a single family, and then the small tool increase for operations and maintenance. Health and Human Services, that was just a budget correction. Social Services, no change. Cemetery, no change. Culture and Rec, museum grants, so that was that $5,000. Otherwise, it's wages and fringes in there at 22,000. And recreation up 17,000. And again, that was that $10,000 for that single family. Otherwise, it's a wage increase and small fringe increase at 5.5%. Parks and Building and Grounds is up 20,184. And that's a 2.6, and that's all wages. And then the pool up 7,875, 2.2, and that's wages. As you can see here, if there wasn't a change, I'll point this out, if there wasn't a change actually in any insurance within a particular category, and because we were able to get our insurance at a 0%, and the general employees went up 0.1 in WRS, this would have been more the norm of, you know, a couple $1,000s from one year to the next. But we added those insurances, we made a budget correction, so that's why the fringes look so much bigger than the year before. Cable is up, but again, we took in the revenue on the other side, so that's a wash. The Washington Center Gym is a small change. And then equipment, we're going at 145, the same as last year. So there's no change there. So the total operations is up 4.2%, increase of $334,000. Does anybody have any questions on any particular department? We have a lot of our department heads here tonight, willing to answer any questions you have about any of the changes they have within their departments. If there's no questions, I will move on to the items over 2,500 in the budget. Keep in mind, these are operation and maintenance. So operations and maintenance probably went up the smallest. So you're going to see that the changes are quite small on the operations and maintenance side. Probably the biggest one being in the change at the Department of Public Works level and the insurance level. So here's the audit for 5,000. Software change of 300. I'm gonna go over probably anything over 5,000. If you want me to stop at any other one, just let me know. And here's the insurance, the crime, property and liability we talked about, up 13.9. The reason in total that it went down is because there's a small change, a decrease in the unemployment, and a decrease here in excess liability. Otherwise, here we have the contract for weights and measures, the ambulance. That number doesn't seem right. I thought it was more like 2,000.
Yep.
Something's wrong with that. Repair and maintenance for the street, that's the one I was talking about, and then a little bit of contract increase there, both 6,000. $5,000 here for the museum, but we talked about the grant that covered it. Cable 3, dues and subscriptions and their equipment. Again, we have revenue on the franchise fee side that covers those increases. Economic development, the Ignite Fox Cities contribution, and the consultants 1,500. Cemetery is the same. So overall, the increase was $39,000. Also from year to year, we take a look at each of these categories, the health insurance, the retirement, and then Social Security and Medicare. All Social Security and Medicare, as you take gross wages and it's times 7.65%. We all pay these, doesn't matter if part-time, full-time. Everyone pays Social Security and Medicare, so I take the gross salaries and I multiply it times 7.65%, and that's the $10,000 for that. Health insurance, $79,000, keeping in mind that that's additions to health insurance. The health insurance itself did not go up. And then the retirement went up $32,000. Is there any questions on anything within this operations and maintenance side? All right, then budget by fund. We have the general fund revenues. These again are larger categories than the general fund expenditures. The operational revenues in the amount of 5.4 million. We have applied fund balance and reserves and transfers in the amount of 586,000. Our sales tax from Outagamie County, 25,000, and then the general fund tax levy, as you can see, is down. And again, I talked about the movement of the personal property tax. So it is the first time ever since I worked here that I've seen the general fund tax, so they actually dropped. General fund expenditures doesn't mean that people are paying less, it just means in dollars and cents that it's less. Expenditures by category, we have general government at 1.6 million, public safety at 3 million, public works at 1.2 million, culture and rec at 2.3 million, health and human services at 230,000, and then equipment maintenance again at 145,000. If we keep our projects at 500,000, keeping in mind that in February when I do the final estimates on our current budget, we will try to put anything that we have in additional funds into this $500,000, hopefully adding to the dollar amount so we're able to do some more things in that or at that capital meeting. So overall, our budget at $9,161,224. Our debt service levy in the amount of $1,022,775. So here's taking a look at different categories and a little bit more drilling down on this area up here. So what does those designated funds look like? On the top, you can see that within this presented budget, the salaries went up 163,000 or 3.5%. Fringes went up 122,000 or 6.71%. Again, keeping in mind there's addition of two at the police department, and then a building inspector position, and then the two split $10,000. That makes up the entire $122,000 for this increase of 6.71. The O&M, operation and maintenance, of increase of 48,792 at 2.66. And so your total operational budget increase of 334.4%. And the total general fund expenditure of 9,161,000, or an overall increase of the budget of 3.79%. This is how the city would pay for it in this budget presentation. So the tax levy would be 3,137,880, down $16,000. The operational revenue, 5,411,000, up $167,000. The sewer transfer of 169,000, up 6535. Our Ottawa County sales tax, that estimate at 25,000, and that's no increase. Here's the investments. We talked about this in finance, and that's the additional $100,000 we're gonna pull out of that investment. The short-term debt of $50,000. Reserves, which are down here. So we have the health insurance reserve. At the end of the year, we've been reserving health insurance. I wish it was more than that. I could have never anticipated we were gonna add 3 to it. I've often said, I just wish everyone was on insurance. It would make all our budgeting easier. But it does save us a lot of money at the end of the day when we do have the payouts. Capital reserve of 116,000. Economic development funds of 15,000, and then unassigned fund balance of 50,000. That makes up this 206,888.99, and then the TID revenue of $60,000. You can see we're balanced. So we have a 3.79% increase here and a 3.79% increase here, or a total of 9,161,000 here and a total of 9,161,000 here. And what is this going to look like to the taxpayers? So the general fund tax levy would be in the amount of $2,990,752. Debt service, $1,022,775, for a total tax levy of $4,013,527. Okay, the $46,000 decrease, part of it being debt service, part of it being general fund. All right, and what does the tax levy look like? And these are not estimates anymore. When this went out, it was. But these are actual. We didn't get the actual until Friday afternoon. So I know this is our actual assessed value, and these would be our actual tax rate. You can see they're very similar. So in 2023, we're at 9.91. Last year, we're on Wapaka side, 9.91, 10.25. And with the budget being presented, would be at 10.44. Outagamie side, 9.87, last year 10.2, and 2025 next year at 10.43. So this means that a $200,000 home value or increase for Wapaka would be $39.08, and for Outagamie County side would be $45.51. Another thing that I would like to share with you about this is that we are currently at an assessment ratio within the city of on the Outagamie County side, well, both sides about 0.65 or 65%. So the actual value, so we're being taxed at 200,000. The actual value of the home is 304,000 in even numbers. We all know where you're going to, or we're going through a reval next year, I think, or in the year after.
26,
Yep, the
probably.
year after. What will happen is you're going to see, what should happen or will happen is that you're going to see the fair market value go up, and you're going to see the tax rate come down. Doesn't mean at the end of the day depending on how people are valued, they will find some people that should be higher, some that should be lower. So that's why the assessment's supposed to be fair and equitable across the city. So once we do that reval, if you look at Wapaka County, and I shared this with you in one of the finance committee meetings, it matters what your ratio is at. So Wapaka County, or Wapaka, the city, I know was asking, what does your, tax rate look like? Well, when you look at the tax rate, you have to look at the ratio because to make apples and apples. Otherwise, you're looking at a tax rate that's lower, but doesn't mean that your ratio is higher. So it could be the same thing. And I did give that presentation at one of the finance committee meetings, and I shared the ratio and the tax rate, and then what would that tax bill look like. So I just wanted to share that with you while I was talking about this. And then what will these, because we did utilize some of these balances, and we've done this in previous years, but where does that leave us in these bigger categories of assigned fund balance? It leaves us with a capital reserve at the end of 2025 of almost $334,000. We try to keep dollars, as you know, from year to year in case we would lose a snowplow or something, or some major fixing needs to be done and we don't have those dollars. So we would look at this fund to help us pay for it. Our retirement reserve would be at $830,000. And our unassigned fund balance, we'd anticipate to be at $3,500,000. And here is where, once we increase our operation expenditures, this is our policy retention at 2.165. So again, I talked about bonding next year. These are the kind of things that are very important to them when we meet with the bonding agencies about where our fund balance is at. So we're keeping them healthy, is what I would call that, moving into tax year 2025. So I guess, is there any questions on any of the information presented, the tax rate, the tax levy, debt service levy, any of the categories? I feel for $40, kind of what Chad outlined what's going on in our city. If you don't take a look around and see that there's things being done and roads being fixed and things being built and houses being put up, probably living under a rock. And the inconvenience of of having to drive around and all the things that are going on. I just feel like, $40, I don't know, I guess it's up to you guys at the end of the day, but I think there's a lot to show for it. How I feel about that. Just a lot going on in the city and a lot of districts. And Oshkosh Street next year and Mill Street, just a lot of planning. And then we plan on finishing the downtown in 2027. So just a lot of forward planning and a lot of things I think that you guys have a lot to talk about when people would say, what's going on. Of course, I'd be like, really? Never drove downtown lately, but yeah, watching Swiderski go up is quite amazing. Every morning I sit at that corner and go, oh. And the people sit, and Saturday, you come up to that stop sign on Saturday and there they are working away. So that's it. You guys have any questions? Any comments?
Outside, it looks like everybody did a good job. A lot of work went into it.
Very fortunate to have a lot of great department heads in the city. I don't know how many times I have to tell you that. It sounds like a broken record, I know it, but they're all willing to share, take the time to look at what other people are doing. They don't do their budget in my department only. They care about what happens to the city as a whole, and they're very conservative budgeters. Plus, at the end of the day, at the end of the year, when there's money left in their budget, they don't spend it up like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have this next year. Because the philosophy is, whatever doesn't get spent goes into capital. It goes back into our city for so many great positive things that are going on. And they know that they're not gonna be penalized if they don't spend it. So that allows them the flexibility to say, hey, I had an employee out for 6 months. Yeah, I have some extra money, but I'm not gonna go buy $6,000 worth of supplies just because I have some dollars left in my budget. I think it gives a lot of positive movement forward with those dollars to be able to save them and use them for capital.
You done, Judy? Okay, at this point, that'll commence the discussion of 2025 budget. We're gonna look for a couple of motions.
Oh, yeah. We do. Sorry, John. And the wheel tax is an estimated budget. So there won't be a specific dollar amount on the budget, and I don't know where it is. The wheel tax budget. So in 2020 forward, we'll carry forward wheel tax revenue of 135,000. We anticipate adding 130,500. So that would be 266,361. As you can see below, there's a list of 24 budget items that we're still working through, and we talk about this at finance every month. So we have the downtown projects, the North Street and the House Road Alcon engineering that still needs to be done. So the estimated balance within that fund, I would anticipate by the end of 2025, 153,000. Now, that doesn't mean during 2025, I would expect the Department of Public Works to, earmark a project here or there. That's entirely up to them normally to where these dollars are gonna be spent and what that's gonna look like. So the dollars are there. Hopefully, the city will be able to apply for a grant, and then maybe these dollars would be available for something like that. Worked out really well for North Street when those dollars were available from Wapaka County. So hopefully, or maybe something like that would pop up. And that is it. So we've spent 815,000, and here is all of the infrastructure or roads or crossings or industrial loop crossing that have been used, those dollars have been used for. All right. Any questions on any of that? I'm sorry.
A lot of numbers, Judy, a lot of numbers. Now that we're commenced discussion of the 2024 budget, at this point, we're gonna look for a couple separate motions. I will give you the dollar figures after we get a motion. First motion is gonna be for the general fund budget, the debt service, and the general tax levy. Looking for a motion?
I'll make that motion. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Pache. To recommend to council a general fund budget of $9,161,224. The debt service of $1,022,775. And third, the general tax levy of $2,990,752. Any further discussion on that? Judy will call for the vote.
Mark Herter,
Yes.
Bernie Ritchie.
Yes.
Mike Barrington,
Yes.
Bob Bisa,
Yes.
Tim Roberts,
Yes.
John Fouché,
Yes.
John Haas,
Yes.
David Dorsey,
Yes.
Belinda Croy,
Yes.
Charlene Magowski.
Yes.
Motion carried. Second motion I'm looking for is the wheel tax.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Besaw to approve the wheel tax fund. There's no dollar amount of tax. We're not specific on that. Any other discussion on that? Judy's gonna call for roll again.
Mark Herter,
Yes.
Bernie Ritchie, Mike Barrington,
Yes.
Bob Visa,
Yes.
Tim Roberts.
No.
John Fouché,
Yes.
John Haas,
Yes.
Dave Dorsey,
Yes.
Belinda Croy,
Yes.
Charlene Magalski. Yes.
Motion carried 9-1. I guess before we move on from that, I'd just like to thank Judy and all involved in all these numbers, and I know it's a lot of hours, and
You're welcome.
I don't know if it goes appreciated enough. Thank all you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next is the authorize the borrowing, Judy.
Correct. So, we have to do an authorization to borrow. Chad has it up on the screen there. So that, yes, as part of the budget process. It needs to be.
I'll make a motion. Motion made by Mr. Dorsey, second by Mr. Ritchie, to recommend to council a resolution to authorize borrowing of $50,000. Any further discussion? Judy, got to call roll again?
Not for this one.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is a reminder that we'll have a capital equipment and projects meeting December 4th, 2024, immediate following the Finance and Personnel Committee. It's just a reminder for everybody. There's no further discussion. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Roberts. For adjournment, any further discussion? All in favor signify by